Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell from the Hawthorn Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, you got MJ from the Coaches Panel. Welcome back to another episode of the 50 Most Relevant. We're into the teens now. Number 19, Fremantle ruckman Sean Darcy. Can I encourage you, don't make the S. Darcy mistake at some point this year and go and pick Sam. You're going to get very, very different outcomes in 2022. Joining me on this episode to talk about Sean Darcy, we've had him on a little bit just a couple of days ago with Elijah Hollins. He's back now talking about the big Fremantle ruckman. I got Jimmy. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hello, MJ. I'm just a bit nervous about that surname thing. I've got pick one in a draft this year, and I'm like, yeah, Dacos. I just got to make sure I pick the right damn one.
Don't get Josh Dacos.
Can you imagine?
Someone will do it. Someone will do it. And if it happens to you, tweet us, send us a screenshot, and we'll change your name so that nobody knows it was you. Let's talk about this 23-year-old Fremantle ruckman. He's incredible at what he delivered for us last year. Career numbers across the formats. It was a 133 against the Bombers as his top, not just seasonal, but career score in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team. Not bad against Phillips, while in SuperCoach, that same game, he was pretty good, but it wasn't his best ever. It was a couple of weeks later against Carlton, a 193. Yeah, not far off the 200 club. Rarefied air. That's a career high score from him. In SuperCoach, his average is at 118, which means he'll set you back just under 650K, and he's the number 2 priced ruck in that format. While in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, his average of 93.7 means he'll set you back just a touch under 800,000 in Dream Team. And when I mean a touch, I mean less than $1,000, while he's 786,000 in AFL Fantasy. And Jimmy, no one's really touched Sean Darcy in salary cap formats much for the past couple of years. But for draft coaches, single or keeper leagues, Sean's always been picked up, whether it be off the waivers or late on draft day, because he has shown really nice scoring potential, even if he hasn't had the durability to put it all together over his career.
Oh, absolutely. And a player like Darcy is very, very relevant in a draft situation. And I guess we'll talk a little more about that towards the end of the podcast. But from a salary point of view, he's our good friend Benny at Coaches Panel here would always say that your injury-prone players, you either pick him at the start or you don't pick him at all. And I think Darcy falls firmly into that category here. That if you think he is going to sit in your top 2 rucks or close enough to it that 100 odd grand that you save in Dream Team or Fantasy is worthwhile. And he was a top 2 ruck or thereabouts in SuperCoach last year. So it's a valid choice from that perspective. And if you think that money that you save in the other formats is worthwhile and you can do enough with that somewhere, it's only 100K, so it doesn't make or break it necessarily. But if it's just enough to get you over the line on something you really, really want, and you genuinely think he's got that next level of improvement in him, you've either got to start him or not pick him at all.
Yeah, he's going to be a fascinating player to look at. Last year, he ranked 6th in the league for total hitouts, 11th for total contested marks. And that's one of his real strengths. It's not just a hit out player, but he's really nice below his knees, crazily for such a tall man. Not super mobile, but super clean beneath his knees. And then he finds this way to just position himself nicely to take contested and intercept marks for his Fremantle team. He had more hitouts last year than Riley O'Brien, Scott Lysett, and Tom Hickey. So that's certainly an area where he picks up some points, 28 hitouts last year. But the areas where he improved his fantasy output was through a career high marks tally. His possessions jumped about 4 possessions per game. And the crazy thing is, while he does have a really nice 3 tackles a game, in his first 2 seasons, it's up over 4 tackles a game. So already some coaches might see some inbuilt value from that perspective. He averaged that 93.7 in Dream Team and Fantasy, 9 tons across the year, 3 of them over 120, an additional 4 between 90 and 99. And from his 21 games last year, he only had just the 3 games last year that were under 80. Not too bad, considering he's ranked 3rd for averages and points amongst all rucks. While in SuperCoach, even stronger. That seasonal average of 118 broken down into 14 tons, 9 of those over 120. And here's where the ceiling starts to kick, Jimmy. 6 over 140, 4 over 150, including a 183 and a 193. 4 additional scores between 90 and 99, and just 2 sub scores under 80. And there was a 3-week period of time in SuperCoach where he was supreme to everybody in the competition between round 16 and 18 in that format. He had a 3-game average, Jimmy, of 177. That is how you dominate a season. He ranked 3rd for rucks for total points, 2nd for averages. Yeah, he's ahead of Grundy in that format. And by averages, he's 7th in all of SuperCoach. So we're talking about a guy who's got a better average than these premium options. Different lines, but premium options. All of these guys have been covered so far. Well, not all of them, but most of them covered in the 50 most relevant. Jared Lyons, Tom Mitchell, Sam Walsh, Rory Laird, Zach Merritt, Darcy Parish, Cam Guthrie, and Callum Mills. He's got a better average than all of these guys. And while he's not the most popular pick across the formats just yet, SuperCoach is certainly where people are leaning to him towards the most. He's just got a really nice score build, a really nice ceiling, especially in SuperCoach. And I suppose the big question, and you've already raised it a little bit, let's talk about it, is where is he in the world of premium rucks? That's probably the conversation that determines whether people start, pass, upgrade, or just blacklist Sean Darcy this year.
Yeah, and look, it really is crystal ball sort of stuff. But he's shown us enough when he has played in those last couple of years that he's got something to him. And I remember a time in SuperCoach where you'd pick Todd Goldstein because he'd walk across the park and they'd add 40 points to his score. He'd sneeze in the forward pocket and bang, there's another 7. We're hoping they're not sneezing this year, I guess. But it's I get the same sort of feel that they're doing a bit of that with Darcy as well. The hit out to advantage is always a little bit subjective, I think. And he seems to get a few of those, which is nice. And Fremantle's inside mid-game, I think, is likely to improve this year on previous. So that's a good sign for him in that format, especially. Across the others, he's not had that continuity of his football for a long time. And so if he can get a bit of that, if he's having a solid preseason and he can get a good run in his game, there's no reason to think he can't hit another level with his scoring. And if that's improving an average of 95 to something better, then that does put him in the conversation as potentially a top tier ruck. But it is a gamble. And I think that's the main thing we've got to look at. It's a big gamble on the injury front. He's proven that time and time again.
And even in this year just gone, like the guy's bandaged up like the mummy half the time. And there's 2 or 3 moments in every game last year. If you're an owner, you're going, that's it, I'm done. And then he'd find a way like Dangerfield to just rebound back and get through. So he's always got that nervous moment just because of how contested and the physicality he plays as a ruckman is very, very different to some of the other rucks in the league.
Oh, and we love to see it. He's great fun to watch. So look, all
right. So
you feel nervous all year. You'd be nervous. Yeah.
So look, he played 21 games. So if you want to build I'm not starting him because of an injury concern. Well, as you've said, Ben from the coaches panel has been bullish about this ever since we started this, which was the injury variance only increases as injury-prone guys play more footy. Now, if you're not picking him because of the injury history, different story. But if you're going, the injury history worries me, I won't start him. Okay, well, you're off him for the year. That's got to be the way you go. But if now the conversation is, I'm off him because I don't know what he'll do and his body's not the concern. Okay, well, now he could be an upgrade target for us. What makes it interesting for us, Jimmy, is he has the same multi-buy round as Grundy and Gawn. In some formats, he's about 100, 120K cheaper than either of those options, while he's a bit cheaper than Gawn in SuperCoach and a little bit more expensive than Grundy. So it's safe to say, 100K can make a difference. But across the formats, let's work our way through it a bit more systematic than that. Who is going to be the best ruckman this year is probably the question coaches have to ask as they're starting a premium ruck one. I don't think there's enough value rucks to run a 2 value ruck proposition this year. Last year, you could have built that thought. I don't think that's the case this year. I think we've got some good ones, but I don't think we've got enough to be confident that we don't touch a premium ruck. So I think it comes down to, is it Grundy? Is it Gawn? Is it Darcy? Is it Rowan Marshall? And maybe it's a stretch, but maybe you could put Riley O'Brien in a Dream Team fantasy format. I don't think he'd be in consideration for SuperCoach, given the way he impacts the game. Probably Nick Nat's closer there. Who of those group do you feel the most confident starting, Jimmy? Because I think that's how we then need to dissect whether or not we're going for Darcy or not.
Yeah, look, and from a confidence point of view, runs are on the board. You'd think it's probably Grundy. So
yeah, that's right.
He's the safe play,
and his
absolutely
value based on what he has done too. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go Grundy.
So
let's put Grundy at 1. I think that's a commonish consensus across the fantasy community. That doesn't make it right, but just for the sake of argument, all right, let's do that. I think the next question people want to know is, what happens to Max Gawn? Is there a regression? Is there not? And I think a lot of people have built confidence in what Luke Jackson did in the second half of the grand final. And I think that's got some merit, but I also think it's just one game. And throughout the entirety of the season, Gawn was a dominant rucking force.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably the next question before people go, oh, Darcy's going to overtake these 2 boys. The question's then got to be, what do these 2 boys deliver for us before we look at Darcy? Yeah.
And look, it's, as we say, it's all crystal ball sort of stuff. I can't see Gawn dropping off too much. He's not 48 years old yet. So
no.
He's and he's proven for a long time that he's capable of that scoring, even when Jackson's in the side. So
it's true.
He might lose some ruck time. He'll pick up some contested marks in the back line. Yeah,
he kicked a couple of goals in that preliminary final, didn't he? Yeah,
that's it. He's multifaceted with his scoring. So I don't think we can pick Darcy on the premise that we expect one of the 2 big dogs to just drop off significantly. I think you're picking him as a point of difference and as that little bit of value where you think by the end of the year, near enough will be close enough, if not in that same bracket, that it makes it worthwhile for you. So to me, that's, I think you look at it, there's some really interesting discussions, I guess you can look at then about whether your second ruck should be a premium or whether or not you're looking at a value option like Bruce or, Flynn or whoever else. So and good luck trying to pick that one. I think we can talk around in circles for a while on this, but I think, when it comes to it, we can feel pretty safe and confident that Gawn and Grundy are going to go pretty close to there or thereabouts in that bracket because they've done it for so long and there's no real genuine reason to think there's any significant drop off yet. You can build an argument, but you're looking for, you're really drawing it. That's true.
You're putting a lot of faith into a half of footy on the grand final.
Yeah, that's it.
And it was a very, very good half.
Oh, for sure. There, we don't talk down Jackson, and he will come through, and he'll be something really special. Absolutely in time, but he's not taking away bulk points off Gawn at this point, even when they're both playing together. So that's, I think, worth noting. And I think then when we're looking at Darcy, it is just how much confidence do you have in him that he's got another level in his game? And how much confidence do you have that he gets through the season relatively unscathed?
I think those are the 2 unknowns. For me, I'm not as concerned about the physical side of it because, to your point, it would be a start or just let him go.
Yeah.
The thing for me is the big scoring ceiling games he had, and it's certainly SuperCoach more favored than he is in Dream Team and Fantasy. That is because he takes contested marks. He does impacting moments in terms of gets into the score involvements, does tackles, picks up intercepts, hit outs to advantage. All of these ingredients, SuperCoach formats, give you a little bit of extra gravy than AFL Fantasy and Dream Team. So what I did is I looked at his big sort of 110 plus scores in Dream Team and his 120 plus scores in SuperCoach. And it's always who did you manage to score these against? Not for any other reason than just going, what happened in these games that created these big ceilings? Let me walk you through how he went in his big 110 plus scores in Dream Team and his 120 plus scores in SuperCoach. Round 9, He got a 133 in Dream Team and Fantasy, 146 in SuperCoach. Good score. Took on Essendon. Phillips, the backup ruckman, was playing there, who has been backup ruckman at Carlton, I think backup at GWS, and will forever just be Mr. Backup Ruckman. Let's go forward a month. They took on the Gold Coast Suns. He scored a 132 in Dream Team and Fantasy, 140 in SuperCoach. He played an actual ruckman, a genuinely good dude, Zach Smith, but not anywhere near what his premier days used to be like of a decade ago. Then 3 weeks later, takes on Carlton, 116 in Dream Team and Fantasy, 193 in SuperCoach. Beats up on Tom DeConning. I think he's going to be a fine player, but he's a young ruckman and he just got absolutely mauled. The following week, takes on the Hawks. In the ruck roulette, it was Segler that got his turn that week. Gets a 122 in Dream Team and Fantasy, 183 in SuperCoach. The next week after, it's Geelong. Reece Stanley has his chance to lose, and he gets a 103 in Dream Team and Fantasy, 156 in SuperCoach. There is no other 110 plus score in Dream Team or Fantasy. They are probably arguably the weakest rucks that he could have come up against, and well done to him for beating up on them. And that's exactly what you need to do.
And I was just about to say, I think that's the point we need to make. Yes, he did play the lower end rucks there, and you can only play against who you put up against.
Exactly right.
But he got the job done. And I think that's the key point to look at, is when there is that opportunity for bulk points, he goes and gets them. That's it. He's found that trough and he's had a good feed, and that's what we want to see. So that, to me, is an encouraging sign. I'd be more concerned if he was playing against those guys and scoring 70s and 80s. It's not as though he's getting those points against Gawn or Grundy or one of the top flight rucks.
Absolutely.
But he doesn't necessarily have to do that every time if he's feeding out on the little ones.
No, it's true. Look, probably the SuperCoach scores that were over 120 that weren't in that list was round 6 against North Melbourne, against Todd Goldstein. So certainly no slouch. Todd, the one that I think deserves the most credit for all of his scores in SuperCoach was the second last game of the year against West Coast. He got a 150 in that format. Now, in that format, and a guy that gets a lot of hit outs to advantage in Nick Nat, that deserves some serious credit. So I think you're right. People will look at that narrative in one of two ways, and I think both have rights to be valid, but it's all that confirmation bias. You see it and go, he's beating up on the teams he should. Awesome. Or you go, he can only score well against the bad rucks. Neither are wrong. I think it's the same glass. You're just looking at it from a different lens, or from
that's it, half full, half empty. Yeah. And I think what it does also show us is that SuperCoach is very much his game.
It is.
And much more so a valid option in that format than the others.
Yeah, I think so too. Look, for me, I like the value rucks at R2 this year. There's some really nice ones. Bruce feels like the obvious one that is banging down the door, was given opportunities. Yes, GWS did a good job at covering for him last year, and he'll have to fight through that. But if that does happen, there's an easy R2 for people. So I don't think you need to go premium set and forget rucks this year. For me in Dream Team and Fantasy, I can't start him over the value of Brodie Grundy. I really just can't do that. In SuperCoach, it's the same, but I've got no concern about trading into him because I'm not worried about the injury history. Others that are mean you won't be able to trade into him. Regardless, he must be on your watch list during 2022. You don't get 180s and 190s in SuperCoach, or 130s and 130s and 120s in Dream Team and Fantasy and not be someone we consider. So he must be a watch list, if nothing else. But drafts interest me, Jimmy, and I'm very keen on your take. I think most will probably still go the Grundy Gawn as the first two rucks off the board in most drafts.
Comfortably.
But then it does open up a little bit, and partially depends on the format you draft in, I suppose.
Yeah. And you see, in most is maybe an exaggeration, in a lot of draft leagues every year, single season leagues, someone will start a ruck run. It's usually somewhere in that third or fourth round, give or take. And you'll see because Gawn and Grundy will go in the first round somewhere. Almost every year. And then a little bit later, someone, there's that tier of next, 4, 5, 6 guys that are close, but not quite. Your big midfielders are gone off the board. The handful of quality forwards are gone, and they go, well, time for a ruck. Let's go. And so does the next guy and the next one and the next one. And invariably, it'll be one. That's where Darcy is going to go.
Yeah.
What I kind of like the idea of, and I've not thought through it too much just yet, but I kind of like the idea. If you've got pick one in a draft, especially pick one, maybe pick 2 or 3, and you go and get the Petrarca or the Steele or whichever big mid or that you really like the look of this year, coming back on the return, if he's still there at the end of the second round, with your second 2 picks, you go and get Marshall and Darcy.
Oh, interesting.
You've then got 2 ruck options. Yes. Marshall's a forward this year in Ultimate Footy.
Yes, and with DPPs in all the other formats turned on, he might pick it up on the return.
Correct. Yep. That gives me a lot of comfort in that in a starting position, you have Darcy as your main ruck. You've got the injury cover if you're desperate for it, in Marshall being able to shuffle in.
Yep.
And you've got Marshall, who I think will be one of the top handful of forwards this year as well. So, and it's guaranteed to start a ruck run.
Oh, yeah. Well, you do that. I really like that in Ultimate Footy where he's already got that forward status. I'd be a little less hesitant where he doesn't have it.
I wouldn't be doing it if he doesn't have the forward status already. But it's in that format. Yeah. That little strategy it opens a lot of doors and I think creates a lot of opportunity for chaos, which is always a fun thing. So,
well, it would certainly create chaos for coaches. Last year, his ADP in Ultimate Footy was 223. You're not getting him this late. You could probably knock the 200 off and he'll still be pretty much gone by the number 23. Depending on the format.
He'll go in that ruck run whenever it starts, whether it's in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round, that's when he's going as part of that process with Marshall and O'Brien and the few others that are going to be close to that top tier. So it's that really interests me. Beyond that, I'm in no rush to pick him. If I miss the start of that ruck run, I'm not going to jump out and grab him for the sake of it. I'll quite happily draft around it and try and find one of those value rucks later on instead.
They pop every year.
That's it. They always do. And I think, it's easy to get sucked into a run like that, but you don't want to if you can help it. So you either start the run or you avoid it.
Yeah. Anytime you're reacting to what's happening on a draft, you're behind.
Yeah.
You always want to be ahead, not just ahead of the curve, but not in the slipstream of where everybody is. Otherwise, you're always getting the 3rd, 4th, 5th choice to what everybody's doing. If that ruck run goes, okay, who are the premium mids that are still there? Who are those defenders that are going to break out that could pop? Focus there.
Yeah.
Let them fight over the Lysets and the O'Briens and the Hickeys and the Nick Nats. You go elsewhere and get some nice, strong options because by the time the rucks are done with them, you'll have the pick of the litter and substantially later on draft day. So that's a really nice strategy to work through. I think he's a brilliant pick across the formats this year. I just can't start him in the salary caps, not because of injuries, but because I just don't see how I can squeeze him in based on what I've got ahead of him. But in drafts, I think it's there. And if you draft some protection around that pick, whether it be through that Marshall one, as you've suggested, or you go and pick up a couple of extra options, I really don't mind that as an option. Hey, Jimmy, appreciate your work today on this episode.
Always good fun, mate. Thanks for having me.
All right, mate. If you or anybody else wants to go check out any of the articles of all of the players revealed so far of the 50 most relevant, it's online now for you at coachespanel.tv. If you're loving these podcasts, every single day they're dropping pretty much through 3/4 of the rest of February and most of this year as well. All you need to do is subscribe via Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you do that. Check that out and leave a nice little 5-star rating and review. It's one of the ways you can support the Coaches Panel, but also help others find the Coaches Panel this fantasy footy preseason. All right. The first of our teenage hit is in. And speaking of teenage, this guy was a teenage prodigy. And from the moment he walked in the AFL, everybody's been frothing for him. But actually, is he as good as everybody says? Or is he even better? A lot's changed at his club in the off-season. Even for him, a few things have changed. But will he be a big dog premium in 2022? Can he push his game to the next level and become the uber elite in his line? Who is he? You'll find out tomorrow in the 50 Most Relevant.
Now give it truth, give it up, give it up.